Hi guys, it's Trev, idiot on a motorbike, and this is another day on the epic Highway to Heaven tour. Day 6, Thursday, was going to be another circular route, but heading south into northern Italy this time. It had rained hard all night. The day was going to be a damp start. We had breakfast, just like any other day. We usually went out to the bikes and removed our security locks before putting our sandwiches we had made from our continental breakfast into our top boxes or panniers. Now the clouds were low and it looked like it would rain at any moment. After recovering my riding gear from the drying room, which had not done anything except let the water drip from it, I headed back to my room to get sorted. As I pulled on my boots, they felt cold and damp. At least they were not squelching anymore like yesterday. I put my jacket on and the cuffs were all still damp around it and damp around the collar, but at least my gloves felt okay. There was nothing worse than wet gloves and trying to get your hands in or out of them for that matter. Now we all met outside with waterproofs on in anticipation of the deluge that might well come. After fueling the bikes up, we headed west, a good 20-mile run down the valley with the occasional pitter-patter of rain, but nothing more severe than that. We turned left onto Simpleton Pass, which is known for its panoramic alpine views. Now, if you've never rode this pass, then it's one I would truly recommend. Not because it's full of hairpins, although it does have quite a few, but because it's the road of views and the road full of tunnels. I've never rode through so many tunnels like there was on this leg of our journey, and some are big tunnels. I actually refer to the route as the tunnels of love if you're into those types of roads. Anyway, as we rode on, we were climbing steadily, and our destination was the photo stop with the view looking down the chasm with Ganterbrucke Bridge spanning over it. However, as we climbed, we went into the clouds, so obviously we could not see a bloody thing. This impressive view of the bridge was hidden in the mist. We continued our journey, and luckily the road bent, and just as we rode round the bend, the bridge was in full view. Not quite the view I intended to get, but at least my head camera caught it in a reasonably decent image. We rode further, a bit more climbing, through a decent tunnel, and came out the other side of the mountain. Suddenly, it was like being in a different country, which we weren't, well not yet anyway. The sun was out, there were blue skies and some nice white fluffy clouds floating around. Now that's the thing with riding in the mountains. On one side it can be in a downpour, and on the other side it can be nice and sunny. So you just have to hope Lady Luck is on your side. First opportunity I got to pull into a lay-by with something worth looking at came along. It was a last-second decision. I flicked my indicator on, but Steve was oblivious, too busy looking at the scenery. I turned the bike into the lay-by quite quickly. Steve, however, went straight past. Luckily, the exit point was about 50 metres further on, and he pulled in there. Everyone else followed and parked behind me. Steve pulled in and made sure his bike was eventually facing the exit. He got off his bike, and just as he was walking towards us, his bike had a date with the tarmac. The road was sloping downwards quite a bit, and Steve had not left the bike in gear. It started rolling forwards until its stand could do no more, and down it fell. Fortunately, its crash bar saved it from any damage. Just the usual marks that you'd expect. It was one of those funny slow motion moments when Steve walked away but happened to look back. Seeing his bike moving, he turned and quickly tried to get to it, but slow-mo was in action. His legs were in motion, his arms were outreaching, but the bike could not be saved. Maybe if Steve had been a few years younger, then just maybe he might have made it in time. While Steve was trying to lift the bike back up, I made my way towards him, capturing his efforts all on camera before I was there to help him. I did joke to him how I was going to show this on my video, but in the end I couldn't bring myself to do so. We stood the bike up and then proceeded to remove our waterproofs as the sun was now out in force. After taking a picture or two, it was time to set off again for our destination Gabi Café. our first coffee stop of the day, but not before heading through some more fantastic tunnels, some lovely twisting roads which hugged the hillside for around 10 more miles. At the Café, we sat outside, enjoying the sun and a fantastic waterfall as our backdrop, with a well-earned drink. Our next leg was 42 miles, taking us into northern Italy and onto the fabulous Ponte Brolla Canyon. It was not far from the Café to the crossing point, so obviously we had to stop and take a photo. After crossing, we noticed that the road surface had definitely changed. The Swiss roads were beautifully surfaced, but the same could not be said for Italy. But to be fair though, they were far superior than here in good old England, so you'd not be hearing us complaining. We followed the river Torrente di Viria for a period of time before turning off and heading into woodland with a bit of climbing. A very pleasant ride so far, and after passing through Mazira, we entered the canyon. What a road this was! There was a lot of single lane with some areas with dual lanes, but this road hugged the mountainside. It twisted and turned constantly. Not big twists though, but the small twists where you throw your bike from one side and then straight over to the other. We were not speeding as we like to enjoy the scenery, but riding at a decent speed for the enjoyment of this road. We felt like we were on a racetrack for baggers. This road truly was amazing. I had Steve and Andy right behind me and the rest of the Harleys in tow. One line of bikes like a serpent snaking its way along the floor. What I would have given for some drone footage of us at that point. It would have looked outstanding. We came round a proper bend and this village just appeared out of nowhere. And spontaneously I had to stop for a photo. What an amazing sight it was. And it had this amazing church called Santuario della Madonna del Sangue. And that's a mouthful to say, believe me. We had a 15-minute stop, quick snack and some photos before continuing. This road was the road which kept giving. The twists and turns just never seemed to stop. Well, only for a further 3 miles anyway. Then we came up on this really tight, sharp bend to the right. As I came around it, I suddenly had this Volkswagen camper van in front of me. I waited till I could see past it and then accelerated round it, and so did everyone else. Now, I'd not noticed the train crossing in front of me, though, and could see some red lights flashing, and at the time I was wondering what they were for. Then the rail tracks were right in front of me and the penny dropped. I went straight across, but just as I did, the barrier started to come down. Steve followed and so did Andy. However, Graham had to stop with the rest of the bikes. I was looking through my mirrors and I could see the barriers as they came further down. Steve made it through fine, but Andy had to swerve slightly onto the other side of the road and looked like he had also had to duck down to make it through safely. Now Graham reviewed his front camera and it looked like Andy had had a close call and was lucky not to hit the barrier. But in reality, it was probably fine. As you know, things are never quite as the camera shows them to be due to the distortion from the beveled lens, but it did make for a rather good talking point. When we got to Lago Maggiore Lake, we had a nice hour's rest, so we could stop and eat our sandwiches with the fantastic view of the lake behind us, before heading over the road for a well-earned coffee. After our stop, we headed away from the lake and we travelled a short distance for fuel. Then we did a further 56 miles for our next comfort stop at Airolo, which is at the foot of San Gottardo Pass. Now, one thing I will say about Switzerland, they have very scenic roads. Then all of a sudden, a road just appears out of nowhere. Well, actually, out of the mountain. It could be on large legs towering above you or below you whilst you cross over it. Either way, they just seem to blend effortlessly into the surroundings. Not once did I ever think the roads were an eyesore. Quite the opposite. I found them an engineering marvel, and the new San Gottardo Pass was one of them marvels. After our coffee stop in Airolo, we headed up the new part of the San Gottardo Pass. Yes, it has hairpins, but the road itself is a nice easy route, nothing like the old pass. We snaked our way up and then came to the viewing point, which had a really big car park. The sky had now turned a darker shade of grey, so we decided to put on our waterproofs, as the forecast was for us to catch a shower. This viewing point is where we found the giant Toblerone, and most of us had to have a photo stood underneath it as though we were holding it up. 20 minutes later, after enjoying the views, we rode further up the pass and went straight past the viewpoint where you could see the serpentine cobbled road of the old pass. Now there was no need to stop though. As the saying goes, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. But in our case, we got the photo from actually being on it. We rode down the other side to Hospental and then headed left onto the Furka Pass again. Well, it is on our route, and who cares if this will be the third time of riding it? It's what we came here to do. We headed through Rialp and started the zigzag climb up past the Goldfinger photo stop. Onwards and steadily upwards we went, but yet again the weather had started to take a turn for the worse. We were heading into the clouds. It was just mist at first, but sadly it meant we would not have the fantastic views we were used to from this pass. And as we passed the Alpine research station, the mist gave way to rain. By the time we made it to the downward section, passing the Hotel Belvedere, it was again raining quite hard. We made our way fully down and back to our hotel in Ulrichen. After parking the bikes, it was time for a shower, clean clothes and dinner. Now the topic of conversation was obviously about what a great day we had just had, but also tomorrow's journey back to Buhl. Decisions was the order of the evening. Did we buy a vignette at 40 Swiss francs, which really we should have done at the beginning of the trip, or do we try and risk it for a biscuit? Problem was, if we got caught, we would get a hefty fine, and there could be some border checks, who knows. After a little discussion we decided, or more so I offered, to plan an alternative route, sacrificing time in the Black Forest for scenic country roads without any motorways, therefore negating the need for a vignette or risking a fine. We enjoyed a fantastic meal and a drink or two, or three for some of them. I decided to do a whip round for the waitresses who had looked after us tremendously. We invited them over and presented them with the money as a token of thanks. They were very thankful. It was just a pity we could not have given them more. Now, there was also another group of men in the hotel restaurant, and we'd not really given them much notice. But just after we gave the waitresses their tip, these 6 guys suddenly broke out into a full-on yodeling session. We were kind of like, what the hell? But watched and listened with intent. And then just as it went silent, we were just about to start and give them a round of applause, and they broke out yodeling again. Then silence, and then again. Then silence, and then again. Finally, they finished, and they were silent. We were like, do we applaud or not? The silence lasted a short while, so we thought that was a good cue, and we gave them a round of applause. They deserved it. It was quite good yodeling, to be fair. I then left everyone and headed back to my room. I had my chat with Janice, finding out about home, the kids, etc., and most importantly, about Max. The vets had given him a shot of steroids, and this seemed to have boosted him. He had a wagging tail and was pleased to see Janice when she visited. It had put her in a better frame of mind. They had said that they were putting him on a tube through his nose to put liquid food into him, but until he ate for himself, he could not go home. So things were looking up slightly. After our call, I sorted out a new route, which came with compromises, but did the job, and then started to edit my videos. And then every now and then, this bloody yodeling started again. It was becoming a bloody nuisance now. Good job I wasn't trying to go to sleep, because I could well hear it in my room. But glad to say, at 11:30 p.m, it all went silent. Day 6 had seen us travel 177 miles, heading into Italy on the Tunnel of Love Simpleton Pass, riding the magnificent Ponte Brolla Canyon before heading back into Switzerland and over the new San Gottardo Pass in hot sunny temperatures, and finally back over the Furka Pass in the mist and the rain. But what a cracking day it was. And that's all for now, folks.